didn't start until just now. Sorry about that. And so if you don't want to be recorded if you don't want your face on the recording, you can stop your video share so that um, so that you won't be there. The recording of tonight's gathering can be accessed tomorrow in your My Programs tab in your Shambhala Online account. And so I'll just turn it over to Dr. Smalls. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Can everyone hear me? Jane, will you stop your video as well? Great, thank you. So if you can't hear me, just type "we can't hear you" in the chat box. So I just want to apologize for the to those of you who are attending live, which is only a handful, for the technical difficulties. Originally, I was supposed to teach next week, but someone had dropped out, and we switched, and something got mixed up with the on the back end of that, and our Shambhala Online people who were helping out weren't available tonight, so we were scrambling, and I thank Ashley Dinges and Alex Van Gils for fixing that problem. So I think how we'll negotiate starting 35 minutes late is we'll have a shorter meditation, if that's okay. I can't see you, so I can't tell whether you're shaking your head or not, but I'm going to just decide that that's okay. So please, thank you everyone for joining. We are recording this, so you'll be able to, we just started, we'll be able to watch it. I apologize. I thank you for hanging with us. I'm feeling definitely a sense of frustration at the robots, but also a sense of gratitude that I have an opportunity to teach the Dharma, and that I felt like Mara was trying to block that, but here we are together. So with the sensation of taking our comfortable seated position, whether we're on a chair or a cushion, and just feeling, first touching in to whatever you're feeling. So I'm just grateful to be here at 7:37 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Coming into our body and letting the mind and the body make friends with each other so that they're in the same place at the same time. With a sense of feeling the body, thoughts and emotions, not trying to change them, rearrange them, or even label them so much, but just really feeling them. Being with whatever is happening in your body, mind, and emotions with an attitude of friendliness. Sense of feeling your sits bones really rooting into the earth. And from that, your waist and chest rise. The front of your body is soft and supple, receptive. The back of your body is strong and upright without being uptight, as my friend and Dharma teacher Maho Kawachi says. And you're really feeling your body as it breathes. And when thoughts, physical sensations, and emotions arise, we can just feel that, notice it, incorporate it, make room for it. The taming of the mind doesn't come from struggle, it comes from an attitude of friendliness, relaxation. Okay. So as I said, we have a gonna have a shorter just had a shorter meditation because of the technical difficulties. So I thank you for those who joining us live, and um, some of you will be watching this at a later date because you got frustrated and gave up and went on with your lives. So you'll be able to access this teaching um, in 24 hours or so. I'm feeling a sense of frustration myself. So rather than try to pretend that that's not true, I'm just working with that, just letting it arise in my body. A little cold here. So tonight I wanted to talk about the four karmas and the four karmas having to do with protection principle and mahakalas or dharmapalas, the dharma protectors, and the four karmas um, in this context, the four dharmas concerning protection are principles for protection for our mind and for our interactions with other beings, and really is the building blocks for a wakeful society. And so traditionally, those there are different ways that people talk about them, but they're called pacifying, enriching, pacifying, magnetizing, enriching, and destroying or subjugating. And actually, if you can show you a picture of a mahakala, of a dharma protector, the black protector. And this is on my protector shrine, Mahakala. And this principle of protection really has to start with us as individuals, or me as an individual, working with my mind, my body, speech, and my mind. But I'd like to talk about it a little bit differently tonight. Instead of sort of pacifying, magnetizing, enriching, destroying, as humility, community, intelligence, and refusal. And this is a very sort of down homey way of talking about these very ancient Vajrayana Buddhist or Tantric Buddhist principles of protection. Humility really here has to do with um, the decimation of a certain kind of form of ego, arrogance, let's say. And it has to do, as I'm thinking about it, with not being humiliated or being making yourself small, but it's a form of right seeing. One way of thinking about humility is seeing yourself as you really are. So not less than what I am or less than you are, or not more. Just having kind of right sized, clear seeing might be a Buddhist way of talking about it. Right size is what so 12-step language, but this I'm my right size. So if I am a brilliant musician, I don't say I'm okay, right? Or if I'm a shitty musician, I don't say I'm brilliant. So having a sense of confidence that you don't have to blow yourself up, pump yourself up, or self denigrate. You're on your spot. And so this is a form of protecting yourself from delusion, is being able to have a sense of humility. And you don't have to what we don't want to I don't have to brag about myself. I don't have to um, promote myself. I can let my actions, which is a way of translating the word karma, I can let my actions speak for themselves, because my actions in fact uh, produce results. The ground of all of this, the beginning of all of this is the sort of the well of confidence, the well of humility that we can tap into to work with ourselves first, is really, of course, this idea of basic goodness or basic sanity or bodhicitta or basic worthiness. That if I'm rooted in basic goodness, if I plant my roots in the ground, the soil of basic goodness, I don't have to worry about um, pumping myself up or denigrating myself. I grow from that place. So I'm going to try to go through these a bit quickly. Pacifying, right? Humility, confidence. That, in many ways, is where the practice of shamatha starts us off. Is really working with. I remember when I first started. Well, I first started meditating when I was a teenager, and it was, I had a little rocky road, and but when I would say 2006, when I really sort of committed to the practice of meditation as a way of life, I had a view of myself that was I was a good person and that I was pretty thoughtful and awake. And then I really started meditating regularly, and I got a I got a real view of my mind, which was that it was completely fucking chaotic. And that in fact I had done a lot of work to promote a kind of ego image of myself to myself. And I had to really begin to pacify and get humble with the reality of this chaotic mind. Okay. So then this I mean these are not one to one, like it's not like pacifying is humility, magnetizing is community. I mean it can be. But magnetizing really can be intelligence or community, but for now I'm saying magnetizing is really community. And one of the reasons that community, whether it's a community of practitioners or whether it's a community of activists or whether it's a community of doctors or a community of healers, a community of singers, why it's so important is because we're social animals. We need other beings, whether it's plants or non-human animals or other humans, to help us realize our wakeful potential. We learn from observing and interacting, observing the natural world, observing stars. And most of us need the community, need interaction in order to um, bring um, wakefulness into our ability, into our body, into our speech, and into our minds. It's like when babies learn, particularly mammals, learn through mimicry, through watching. And then you test for yourself and you say, oh, okay, put that food in my mouth. That's how that goes. And there's a sense of, when I think of magnetizing, I think of growth. So I think of community. I think of bringing things to the heart center, bringing it to your life, and bringing it to your capabilities. And then the question is, what do we do with what we magnetize? Remember, this is in the realm of protection. So one can magnetize, and I'm sure you can bring to mind people or maybe your own self. You can magnetize in order to hurt or manipulate or insulate. Or one can magnetize from a place of basic goodness, from a place of basic sanity. And the point, or one of the points, is really to, at least from a Buddhist perspective, help other people to wake up. Help yourself wake up and others. Because as they say, you can't give away what you don't have. Okay, magnetizing. Just going to touch on these lightly. And that's really community, because as I had the fortune of teaching this past weekend in Baltimore, and I was saying, the reason we have Sangha or community practitioners is because, the reason it's called a jewel is because it's an irritant. And we need the irritant of community, whether it's the community practitioners or our family or our neighbors or work, to wake us up. Help us polish that jewel through, like sand in an oyster, however that goes, and makes a pearl, right? It's through irritation. It's through that preciousness comes from the process of rubbing up against and pressure, not from just like chilling. Diamonds are made right under pressure. That's how coal, goes from a thing we don't really value, we burn it sometimes for fuel, to this precious, precious jewel. The process makes it so precious. And so this idea that Sangha or community is supposed to be easy or perfect, is a real, I think, misunderstanding really in the West. It's really kind of a form of laziness. I hope everyone can hear me. So humility, community, and then intelligence. And intelligence here, thank you, Jonathan, for letting me know. Intelligence here is not just mental intellect, but it's a body intelligence. It's emotional intelligence, which many, many, many of us lack and don't value. It's know-how. It's intelligence could be, we could say it's spaciousness, right? Because space allows for wisdom to arise. And so it takes a form of intelligence to, you could even say patience is a form of intelligence, to hold, going back into holding your spot and waiting to see what arises in you, what direction to go. This intelligence is also connected to being connected to something beyond yourself. Understanding that the self is limited and being connected to, whether we call it basic goodness or bodhicitta or the dralas or higher power or ashe, ashe in the Tibetan sense, ashe in the Yoruban lakumi West African sense. Ashe is a form of power, energetic power. So this intelligence is not just thinking. I mean, it's way beyond thinking. It's a kind of, it's almost the insight, prajna. And this is a quality of using our emotional intelligence, our body intelligence, our community intelligence to enrich any situation we go into. Not to dominate or make people feel badly about themselves or make them feel stupid, but to uplift the situation with what we know or what we know how to do. Many times, and I've done this in my life many times. I mean, I'm an academic, right? So the whole enterprise is really based on, Eurocentric in the US, Eurocentric white supremacy domination, and not on kind of sharing and bringing everyone along wherever they may be. There was a study done a number of years ago on graduate students in, I don't, at Ivy Leagues, I think, and they were saying, I think Pema Chodron has told this story, that there was like 0.01 seconds or something between a question being asked and people raising their hand. There was no space for contemplation. And so that's a kind of intelligence driven by anxiety and ego. The intelligence I'm talking about here is really one that's felt and accumulated through experience, and it's really not, it's non-dominant, it's non-aggressive. It's not ego-based, egocentric self, right? It's not something that we, my friend Gendon, Karma Lodro Gendon, was talking last week about giving away the relationship between that he was thinking about between giving away merit and giving away privilege. And so this is in a similar vein that it's intelligence is not about, it's about sharing the space in this context rather than trying to make other people feel stupid, or talking down in the context of a dharma situation, talking down to people from a spiritual hilltop, using this position that one is honored and blessed to hold, to dominate. Okay, so enriching. And then finally, everyone's favorite, destroying or subjugating, or here, refusal. So why am I talking about refusal in a real in terms of the four karmas, in terms of protection? So first, let me say, I have taken it out of my bio, so maybe that's something to think about. But I am a Dorje Kasang. I am a indestructible Dharma protector. I'm still officially the Rusung, or the area protector for New York, although I am planning on resigning, as Jane Heyer is the now is that the Kasang representative in New York. So I really take very seriously this in the Shambhala tradition, but really going beyond in the Vajrayana tradition and the Indo-Himalayan tradition of protecting the Sangha, right? From the Mahakala. Please protect us, oh Black protector, right? Say this protector chants at night. So I take this, I've always been very drawn to this idea of protection that can be manifested in a very real way in community. And the protector, someone who's charged with protecting my own mind. We know this if we've ever taken the refuge vow, where you're kind of turning away from, or even taking the idea of basic goodness is turning away from or realizing the difference between kind of wakefulness and the confused mind, and really making a commitment toward wakefulness. So this idea of refusal has to do with refusing to go along with harmful structures in the world, wherever they may manifest. Refusing to be lulled to sleep by white supremacy and the comforts that brings white people, or people who are labeled as white adjacent people, white aspirational people, light-skinned people, and people who have internalized messages of white supremacy. We have to refuse these things actively. That's destroying. We can't just think of ourselves as nice people, and then there are other people who are bad and who do those things, because we all are. It's a global, white supremacy is global. So it manifests differently in different places, but we have to refuse that system, just like, which has spawned a particular kind of patriarchy and misogyny. It spawned a particular kind of global relationship to capital that's based on subjugation. First, the subjugation started in 1551, was when the first Africans were stolen and shipped to the New World, what we call Brazil, Latin America, and the Caribbean. And the systems of heterosexism, and all the violences that come with those those systems. So there has to be an act of refusal. Remember, karma is action. It's to be an act of refusal in order to actually um, plant the seeds for wakefulness. We can do that with our mind and our body and our speech. There's a reason that body, speech, and mind is so important in Buddhism. And a lot of times in the West, in Western Buddhism, we really focus on the mind, the self. I mean, it, there's a reason that mindfulness is so popular and not, I don't know, speechfulness. And that bodyfulness has been, they've been separated, right? It's a very Western Descartes Cartesian split. Rene Descartes did the theory of, you know, mind and body, but that's in Buddhism, it's a holistic system, body, speech, and mind. There's very rarely a one in Buddhism. It's like 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 12. So, you know, body, speech, and mind, heaven, earth, humanity. And in a kind of community or political or social context, we really have to work with those aspects with ourselves. And then our interactions with others, other beings, is a way to test how we're doing. I feel much better now than I did about 45 minutes ago or an hour ago. I was feeling very frustrated with the technological snafus. And I just was like watching myself and feeling that it was a very bodily sensation of feeling it was really a feeling of sadness of like, oh, wanting to connect and thinking about people who couldn't connect and maybe weren't on social media and couldn't see what we were trying to work on that stuff. So when we work with the interactions we're having with others really is a way to measure or at least see how I'm actually doing. You know, what I say about myself, what I think about myself in terms of my relationship to mindful speech, mindful body, and mindful uh, mind, and then how do I treat the people I interact with? How do I treat my animal and plants and people I love, family, friends, loved ones, lover, people I live with, community? And if there's a huge gap between what I say, how I talk the talk, and how I walk the walk, that's something to really be changed and examined. And then finally, it's like the kind of fruitional quality of that, working with the mind, working with the body, working with speech on an individual level, on an interpersonal level, is that there's then a societal model for protection. There's a society based on protecting others and intervening when there's violence, injury, harm happening. And we understand the difference between levels of harm and violence. We understand that in myself, I can understand the difference between hurt feelings, when my feelings are hurt, and when I've actually been harmed or violated. And I don't conflate those things because I have some clarity of mind. And that we all are responsible for ourselves and our actions and interactions and for a societal situation. I'm talking about from the micro to the macro, not just religious communities and leaders' failings, but our failings and how we treat people in our everyday lives, how we keep people down through our body, speech, mind, action, how we absolve ourselves of protecting, of the kind of principle of protection. Okay, I'm getting a little worked up, so let me I want to hear what people say. Let me make sure. So the fruition of this is not just societal, but it's also an unshakable confidence and a boundless generosity as the place from which we act, rather than a place from poverty, a poverty mentality, or and I don't mean, because there are actual people who experience poverty and financial instability and insecurity. I don't. It's not meant to be to denigrate those people. It's meant to say that a mind and a body and speech that is, we can't be generous with our speech, right? We gossip or we slander. We can't, we don't say thank you and good morning. We've gotten to the point where that seems weird. I was walking my dog in the park. People who know me know I was going to talk about Drala, um, but my dog. And I was walking my dog in the park earlier today, and there's two elder Black women sitting on the bench, and say, "Hello, good afternoon. Hey, young person." Just the generous act of speaking and making connection. And with our, there are kinds of ways we can be generous and ungenerous with our bodies. And so that if we're working with this principle of protection, humility, community, intelligence, and refusal, the fruition of that is really this tapping into, and this is not a doing more than we're supposed to do or not having boundaries, but it's having remember, it's like ground is always basic goodness. The path is working with body, speech, and mind. And then the fruition is is just being tapped into something that's boundless. So I think I'll stop there and take questions. And so I think the host will come on and explain that process.
Okay, so you should be able to see like a little thing at the top of your screen where you can raise your hand. And so that's how we do it. And then I'll promote you to panelist and you can ask your question.
No questions?
I'm not seeing any at this moment. I assume
Everyone know how to raise their hand? You highlight your name and you should see a raise hand function, or it should be at the bottom of your screen.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm not seeing any raised hands at this time.
People can also type their questions in the chat box, or if no one has questions, we can end the Zoom.
Well, while we're waiting for somebody for any questions that there might be, I want to thank you for the talk. This certainly gave me a lot of food for thought, and I'm looking forward to maybe looking at this again and really, really absorbing this.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
No, I'm not. I'm not seeing any questions.
Okay,
Oh,
we can just let there be space.
yeah, we could do that.
Okay, so there's a question from the Burlington Center in the chat box, which which says, which karma is needed in the Shambhala community right now? All of them. There's no one without the other. I mean, in the traditional sense of pacifying, magnetizing, enriching, and destroying or subjugating, we need all of them. And we certainly need humility. I have said many, many times, way before. So I have been part of this particular community before I came to Shambhala in 2006. I was part of the Nichiren Daishonin community, SGI, Sokokai International. I was also practicing in Zen before that. So I've been a part of a few different communities. And thank you, Jonathan. And I would say that in Shambhala, what I noticed for a long time is an extreme lack of humility. And I think some of that has to do with the way that folks may not know how to hold power and powerful teachings. And instead of it being, oh, sorry, Jane, will you? Um, instead of it being a situation where you feel it's like gratitude and like a sense of appreciation, it becomes a way to bolster. I mean, I've heard people say many, many times before, the crisis of last summer around sexual misconduct of and sexual assault committed by Sakya Rinpoche, but also the long legacy of that with the Vajra Regent and with its Chogyam Rinpoche's Parinirvana tomorrow, the sort of anniversary of his death. This is part of our karma, traditional sort of seeds ripening karma. And I would say that the lack of humility, the arrogance of a lot of Vajrayana practitioners, but also non-Vajrayana practitioners in Shambhala, has been so shocking to me. It's something that really shocked me over the years. Um, you know, so we've got to start with humility, right? And um, and really a sense of deflating some of that arrogance, right? And that it's really a heart thing. So we need all of the karmas. We need humility, we need community, we need intelligence, and we need refusal. But what I want to say is what's happening in the Shambhala community or the Shambhala lineage is not separate from what's happening and has been happening in our world for a long, long time. The fantasy that this was some safe place where white supremacy, patriarchy, misogyny, homophobia, transphobia, classism, ableism didn't happen, allowed for there to be 50 years of bullshit, in my opinion, in my view. It allowed for it to be a delusion around we're different. Well, how I am acting in this community reflects how I'm acting in other communities. People don't come into Shambhala and start acting different. This is how people are acting, right? And so I know it's very, it's very clean to say that guy, the Sakyan, you know what I'm saying? Or that guy, Trungpa Rinpoche. But there are levels They're levels. And people are saying, I didn't refuse. I didn't protect myself. I didn't protect others. I didn't protect the community. We're starting to reckon with not just from the top down, but from the whole thing. And that there are many, many communities going through this right now. Buddhist, Christian, Muslim, non-religious communities holding these. How do we, the Me Too movement is articulating something about the long history of patriarchal and misogynistic violence. So we cannot, even in this moment, if you're a Buddhist in Shambhala or a meditator in Shambhala or just on the periphery, somehow not take all the resources that are actually in the world being offered. We need to burst the Shambhala bubble and see what's available. And that really is humility, right? That really is a sense of saying we don't have all the answers. We have really great teachings, but so do a lot of people. So how have other communities, and we've started, how have other communities reckoned with structural problems that does not start and end with sexual violence and sexual assault? This is very important, but there's all kinds of violence that's happening in our community, subtle and gross, that we need to really come to. So we need all these. We need to read the teachings on the Four Karmas. I mean, Mahakala principle, protection principle is really part of our teachings. And we can't be afraid of those because we need protection. We need protection for our minds. We need protections for wisdom to arise. That's why you have a container in the first place. You don't just, you could, but you don't just teach like on highway. Yeah. Okay, another question. Some of the systems you talked about regarding refusal are very powerful and require confrontation. This is from Ashoka. Require confrontation, potentially dramatic confrontation. Could you talk about how you work with rage in regard to refusal and confrontation? Yes. Thank you. Is that you, Ashoka, asking that question? Yes. How do I work with rage? Well, first of all, I would like to say that anger and even rage, there is nothing wrong with those feelings. So they're, first of all, they're emotions and their energy. And so we're taught all kinds of things about, well, let me say this. Some people are taught to engage their anger and their rage. Some people are taught not to. So it's gendered, it's racialized, right? So as a Black person who's was assigned female at birth, who's gender queer, I'm taught, I get punished for my rage and my anger. The trope of the angry Black man or the angry Black woman or the angry Black person is a racist trope used to shut down uh, feelings that arise when when injustices are happening. People who are socialized as women or as femmes often are also taught to swallow their anger. So this is cognitively can lead to depression, illness, physical illness, a sense of unworthiness. But let me say, rage and anger, that's energy. So the first thing I really do is like, first I have to figure out that I'm angry or that I'm rageful. And I feel because I am tapped into basic goodness, I feel a sense of confidence around expressing my anger. And that doesn't mean, yelling, and I'm not, I'm not someone who's like, talking about yelling and throwing things necessarily, but I'm talking about saying, no, fuck that shit. And I feel that it's very important that refusal be grounded in, because sometimes, Buddhists need, or meditators need permission. So I'm going to say refusal is grounded in the four karmas, right? It's grounded in destroying ignorance, destroying the three poisons: passion, ignorance, and aggression. So the idea that we're supposed to, it, I have to give another teaching on this, but the idea, it's a very kind of like white Western thing, that being a meditator or being a yoga practitioner or being a Buddhist means you're nice. Oh, I'm so nice. You're supposed to be kind, but that kindness can be in a form of cutting. The Mahakala, the protector, has a sword. Manjushri, who's the bodhisattva of wisdom, has a sword. My refuge name is Compassion Crystal Sword. So no, cutting and saying you're bullshit, you're bullshitting. That can be compassionate. It doesn't. It's people call it whatever, call out culture or call in culture, but it's honesty. It's a form of humility. This is not okay. And some of us are embodied in a way, our physical bodies, the way that they're valued in the larger social system, that we can take on more risk. I'm a teacher, I'm a Buddhist teacher in Shambhala, but I'm connected to Buddhist teachers. I have friends and other insight friends, I have Zen friends, I have friends who are, unaffiliated, whatever, friends who are in other Vajrayana traditions. And so I'm in a position, because I'm a teacher and I'm an upper middle class person and I have some letters behind my name, that I'm in a social position to take on certain risk, even though I am in other areas as a Black person, as a genderqueer person, as a sort of female-bodied masculine person, as a trans person, I have maybe other vulnerabilities. But in this community, I have just decided I have power and I'm going to use it to stand up against systems. So those of us who are in positions of power in our everyday lives, in our various communities, we need to Buddha up. I didn't want to say man up or woman up. We need to like bodhisattva up and stop being so passive, because people are suffering. People are being hurt very badly while we just chill and in our protection, and let our positions protect us. So yeah, I think I think also that rage, my rage and my anger, is also in relation to other people. So I'm not just getting angry by myself, and I'm talking with other people, I'm connecting with other people in Sangha, in the world. I have communities outside of Shambhala that I'm connected to, and I'm we're talking strategy. You do this, I do that. Okay, what do you think needs to be done? How can we do this together? I'll give you a very banal example. So I don't know if people have been reading about it. This is important in my world, maybe not other people's world. About 12 tenured professors at Yale resigned from a particular program, because for like the last 15 years, they have been being promised all this stuff, doing all this labor that's been uncompensated. They're at Yale, okay, but still, right? Students are like, when's this going to turn into a department, whatever. And so they resigned. It's been in the news. And then they asked other professors to sign. So they have over 500. They hand it to the president of Yale, the dean of whatever, and the provost, over 500 signatures. So the least some of us could do is just sign. And they had many, many more than 500 signatures, but they cut it off today. And so, these are prestigious and non-prestigious colleges that people are signing up from, but we say we're watching and we're having these conversations and we're going to see what you're going to do. You're not going to do these things under the cover of night, in silence. So we can think about in our own community or communities, whether it's at work, it's in our religious organizations, it's in our neighborhoods, it's in our criminal justice system. We can think about where silence benefits the powerful, right? The old act up uh, adage, silence equals death, or silence equals violence. So not everyone can speak up, but people who have, or we need to organize. That's the main thing. Organize, talk with other people, don't work in isolation, and channel that compassionate rage into action. So I hope that was helpful, Ashoka. Any other questions? If you want to raise your hand or so I can see you, that would be nice. Or if you feel more comfortable in the chat box, I'll repeat the question. Maybe we'll take 2 more questions. I know people's time is, people in different time zones. So I want to respect the hour. Or one more question. Something you've been burning to ask that you think no one will answer. I usually will answer anything. I know some of you, so I might call on you. I can see who's on. Okay, I'm actually going to call on someone right now. Lisa, do you have a question you want to ask? Lisa W. Thank you, Burlington Shambhala. Thank you for being here. Or Samina, I see you're on. Do you have a question? Okay, Lisa. Samina, do you have a question about this teaching and how it might be applied to situations that you see? Or who else is on? Alex Barnes, Adriana. If not, then we can close out. Okay. All right. So it doesn't seem like anyone has a question right now. So I think we'll just close. I just want to say, okay. I'm reflecting on your teaching about working through rage and working against isolation. Yeah. So I think I just want to say one last thing before I think one of the things I've noticed there are a lot of forces in the world that are asking us to close up, whether that's in our individual lives, whether that's in our communities, our spiritual communities. And I'm trying to speak more broadly to, beyond Shambhala. There are people who are on this call and who are watching or going to watch that aren't in Shambhala. So this is really global. Everything is saying to close down, to be conserve you, right? Whether it's talking about closing borders are made up and arbitrary anyway, or whether it's talking about or whether there's a sense of kind of not being able to manifest in, let's say, in the Shambhala center context in your community as a part of the community. You're just isolated. So I think really, capitalism, it emphasizes individualism. Buddhism emphasizes community, and many other religions or spiritual paths emphasize community. And so I think there's a way. So behind me is my shrine, and I have an ancestor shrine right here, and I have a candle of James Baldwin and a candle of Harriet Tubman and a picture of Harriet Tubman, picture of my dead mother, and ashes of my dead dog, and the Buddha is on there. But these people are concerned with community in various ways. And so I think that when we are harmed, or we're not, let's say we're not protected in whatever context, that can fuel isolation. And if we're in a community, and all of us are, because particularly around uh, if someone is like beat up, they usually don't, that's usually not something they're taught to be silent about. But if someone is sexually assaulted, it's immediately um, like it's something we're supposed to be quiet about, right? So there's certain kinds of violence that we're taught to not speak about. And if that then becomes part of a structure, which is a part of our global structure, then it's going to flourish because it's in the dark, right? Or it's silent, mixing up my metaphors here. So part of it is shining light on these things that are we're supposed to hold, whether it's sexual violence, whether it's racial trauma, whether it's trauma related to gender, being gendered in a certain way. And then there are other people who have had those experiences and who have skills, whether they're professionals or whether they're organizers or whether they're mental health people, that can there's so much knowledge out there about how to work with these things, both as individuals, as people in relation, and as communities. And we need to take advantage of those. And religious communities, whether you're talking about the Southern Baptist Church in the United States that had over 100 youth pastors convicted of childhood sexual assault, whether it's our own community where we've had so far 3 leaders that have had some relationship to violating boundaries in terms of sexual boundaries and violating people, or whether we're talking about the long history of the Catholic Church or any other it's everywhere. And part of the danger in spiritual communities is that we use like the language of spirituality to justify that. That's what it's called spiritual abuse. So it's everywhere. And I think we have to start using our earthly skills, bringing in people who work on trauma, bringing in people who work on sexual assault. There's actually going to be a talk. I'll let Jane talk about Roland's talk next week, but there are a number of talks we've scheduled on this platform around masculinity, around power. And there's going to be someone who's a licensed clinical therapist talking about the limits of spiritual community. So we're trying to be conscious about that too, in terms of the Dharma talks we give. So that there's no safe place from human failings. There are relatively safe places, and there are places we can make as safe as possible, but silence doesn't guarantee safety. Only these principles of protection can help create spaces that are truly oriented toward safety, healing, and protection. So with that, I think we'll close. And maybe Jane, you can say something about next week.
Yeah. Well, thank you for a really inspiring talk. Um, and thank you to everyone for joining us, for holding space in the middle of technological difficulties, and joining us at the Dharma at the online Dharma gathering. The recorded talk will be posted and accessible on the My Programs tab on your Shambhala Online account. It should be up tomorrow. Next week, Roland Brian Mendiola will be giving a talk titled "Deadly Force: Men, Power, Shame, and Insecurity." You can find more details at shambhalaonline.org/Dharma Gathering. That should be up and available for you. Um, and again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, and everyone, the you can find the listing of teachings that are coming up. There's Brian's, oh, sorry, Roland. He's going by Roland now. Jane will be giving a talk in 2 weeks. I'll be hosting. Dr. Brandon Sloan will be giving a talk in a few weeks on, I think it's around on men and masculinity.
Mm,
So there's Shastri David Kahane will be giving a talk on environment. There's a lot of good talks coming up. So please look at the list and join us. And if you can't join live, great. If you look in the chat box, Adriana has put Roland's talk for next week. If you can't join us live, you can always register at any point, and you can watch any talk you've missed, going back to Arti Tejujas, who's the first talk. So feel free to register and watch any of those talks. And really, again, thanks for coming. And I really appreciate you so much being here. Thank you. So we'll stay on for a few seconds and then we can log off. Leave.